Nike is worth over $90 billion. The swoosh is one of the most recognized logos on the planet. You see it everywhere. You see it on athletes. You see it on kids walking to school. You see it on every corner of the world. But in 1962, none of that existed. There was no Nike, there was no swoosh, and there was no empire. There was just a recent big man named Phil Knight who had an idea about Japanese running shoes. This is the story of how that idea became one of the most dominant brands in history. Back in 1962, Phil Knight was a Stanford baker who was obsessed with running. He toured Japan later that year and he ended up visiting the Onitsuka shoe factory. What he saw there impressed him. The shoes had real quality, but the cost was low compared to what people were paying in the US for German brands like Adidas and Puma. That's when an idea hit him. What if the Japanese shoes could compete with those German brands in the US market? He made a deal to become the US distributor for Teka shoes. When he returned to the US, Phil started selling the shoes by himself. He drove to tech meets and he sold the shoes out of the trunk of his car. Sales were small at first, and Phil realized that he needed help to grow the business. So he met with Bill Bowerman. Bill Bowerman had been his track coach back at the University of Oregon. When Phil showed Bill the shoes, Bill said, "Those Japanese shoes are pretty good. How about you let me in on the deal?" After that, the two of them formed the Blue Ribbon Sports Company. From 1965 to 1970, Blue Ribbon Sports grew really fast. Sales doubled every year for 5 years straight. In 1967, Bill started designing a shoe specifically for Onitsuka. It was called the Cortez and it became their bestseller. By the time 1971 rolled around, they were doing $1.3 million in annual sales. The relationship with Onitsuka seemed strong. Phil was flying to Japan regularly and he was working closely with the executives. Blue Ribbon Sports was successful by any measure, but there was a problem Phil didn't see yet. He didn't actually own anything. Every shoe they sold, it had the Onitsuka Teka brand stamped on it. They were building someone else's brand in America, not their own. And Onitsuka was starting to notice just how valuable the US market really was. That's when everything fell apart. In 1971, Phil discovered something that changed everything. An Onitsuka executive had gone behind his back and he was looking for a new US distributor. Onitsuka wanted to cut Phil out completely and they wanted to take the US market for themselves. Then they made it official. Onitsuka demanded 51% ownership of Blue Ribbon Sports. They were trying to take over the company that Phil had spent years building. So in light of those events, Phil made a decision. He decided that he will break away and that he will create his own brand. In late 1971, he started moving in secret. He found other Japanese manufacturers who were willing to make the shoes without the Tiger logo. His first employee, Jeff Johnson, he suggested that he should name the company Nike, which is the Greek goddess who represents victory. Phil also hired a design student named Caroline Davidson to create a logo. She designed the swoosh and he paid it $5. On May 30, 1971, Blue Ribbon Sports became Nike. Onitsuka found out and they sued them for breach of contract, but Phil wasn't focused on the lawsuit. He was focused on proving that Nike could actually compete. The company had a name in the logo, but that was about it. They had no brand recognition, they had no reputation, and they didn't have an advertising budget that could compete with Adidas or Puma. So Phil went with a different strategy. He started giving shoes away for free and he built relationships with track coaches. Meanwhile, Bill was obsessed with making better shoes. He wasn't just designing them, he was constantly experimenting. He tested lighter materials, he worked to create better grip. He was always focusing on improving something. His mind never really switched off. He was always looking for an edge. He was always thinking about traction, about how the shoe could grip the track just a little better. One morning in 1974, he was watching his wife make breakfast. He noticed the waffle iron on the counter. Its surface had small squares with deep grooves that could grip. Suddenly, an idea hit him. He poured liquid rubber into the waffle iron and let it cool. When he pulled it out, the result was revolutionary. They traded power and cool grip the ground better than anything he had tested before. The Waffle Trainer was born. That show, it became Nike's breakthrough product. It wasn't just good, it was better than anything on the market. And that's when things started changing for them. What made Nike different? It wasn't just marketing, it was product obsession. Bill kept iterating, every shoe had to be lighter, it had to be better than the last one. He will design something, then he will give it to athletes, then he will get their feedback, then he will go back and then he will improve it. The cycle never stopped. In 1973, Nike signed their first big athlete, Steve Prefontaine. He wasn't some sleek corporate guy, he was this raw, rebellious runner who was full of fire. He was always proving himself like a true underdog. Partnering with people like Steve really shaped Nike's image. It became known as a brand for athletes. By the 1970s, Nike wasn't just competing with Adidas and Puma, they were beating them. Then in 1974, that lawsuit with Onitsuka finally settled. The charge ruled that both sides had broken the contract. Onitsuka broke the contract by trying to find a new distributor, and Nike broke the contract by leaving them to start their own brand. Nike was cleared to operate independently, but by then, Phil had already moved on. Bill's drive for innovation also led to another breakthrough in 1979. Nike introduced air technology. The shoes were not just comfortable, they completely changed what athletes expected from their footwear. In 1984, Nike signed a young basketball player named Michael Jordan. At the time, it seemed just like another endorsement deal. It wasn't. Air Jordan became a cultural phenomenon that went far beyond basketball. People who never touched a basketball, they were buying Jordans. The shoes weren't just athletic gear anymore, they were a status symbol. Then came 1988 when Nike launched the Just Do It campaign. The slogan didn't just stick, it exploded. It captured something bigger than sport, it became a mindset, and suddenly, Nike wasn't just for athletes anymore, it was for anyone who wanted to push themselves. Through the 1990s, Nike went global in a way that felt almost inevitable. They signed soccer stars from around the world, they dominated the Olympics. They weren't just an American brand anymore, they were everywhere. Fast forward to today, Nike is worth over $90 billion. The swoosh is one of the most recognized symbols on earth. You see it in every country, you see it in every type of person. Nike has gotten to where it is today because it focused on creating better products. It has always focused on improving its shoes again and again. In the beginning, it was just one man selling running shoes from the back of his car. Over time, that small effort grew into a global company. That did not happen because of shortcuts. It happened because the company was always determined to make something better than the one that existed before. It happened because the company always pushed itself to improve.